All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Monday, and we've got Arlen with us. It's
Oh, it's
Monday
Tuesday,
with
Hal.
Arlen.
It's
Tuesday
Tuesday.
with Arlen. See, I get the dates wrong because you're supposed to be on Monday, but in fact you're on Tuesday. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Where were you, Arlen? Why weren't you where you were supposed to be yesterday at 2 o'clock
Well,
or 1 or 11 a.m., whatever it is?
I went up to Berkeley to see my oldest child who lives up there, and we had a very nice weekend. I was walking around a lot. The Bay Area, there's so much going on. We saw a bunch of street festivals, and there's a lot going on there. And we talked about the zip cars, right? My son does not have a car, so what he does, he'll go on the street, find one of these zip cars, hop in it, because he's got the app. He just drives off, and when he gets to where he wants to go, he stops the car and leaves it there. It's pretty cool. Very quick, very easy. Another thing that I saw that I'd never seen before driving around the Bay Area were these taxis that had actually Ubers that had the passengers in there, but no driver.
Oh, so the self-driving kind of Ubers, and they've now, because I didn't know those were legal. I thought that was problematic. I know there have been several high-profile collisions involving self-driving vehicles. I'm kind of surprised that Uber's willing to roll that out and the state would allow it, because it seems to me this is a recipe for disaster.
I suspect it's a local thing. I mean, certain cities, certain areas.
Arlen, I'm going to just interrupt you because I'm getting some bad feedback on your end. It's not so much your voice, and we weren't having this before. Are you? It seems like there's a little echo, and I'm sure it's on your end. And I'm not hearing myself. I'm hearing you, and then a little bit more you.
It could be my phone, which is it's right next to my computer.
Yeah, it was better just now. When you said it could be my phone, I didn't hear it, and then I heard it.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay, there we go. So you like the zip car concept, though? That you do like?
Yeah, I mean, my son does not have a car, so he could use those whenever he needs to. And of course, the public transportation in general is pretty good there, So there's really no necessity to have a car.
And no question, BART is great when you're going into San Francisco. Were you in Berkeley the whole time, or did you also go over to San Francisco?
I did it all. Berkeley, Oakland, San Francisco. Yeah.
And what's the homeless situation like? The last time I was in San Francisco, maybe 2015, Bay Area, that was more recently actually on Shattuck Avenue there. Every block you have several homeless people camping out. Is it still like that?
Well, I did not go downtown and walk around or anything like that. We just drove around, and I didn't see anything like that, but I wasn't, looking at downtown, so I don't know for sure. There probably is still a lot of that, but I didn't see it.
Well, that one reason I brought that, many reasons, but it certainly stuck in my mind. Nick Kristof, maybe your favorite columnist, has written about how the West Coast liberalism has failed to address the deep poverty that many experience who live out there.
Yeah, California is like #1 homeless state in the whole country. That's very unfortunate.
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, part of it is the weather, right? Because at least on the coast, it's much more temperate. It doesn't get below freezing, doesn't get super hot like it is in most of the country right now, or a good chunk of it. Although you're getting the fires.
Well, of course, you got the availability of homes too. There's just not enough, and they're very expensive, and people cannot afford, to find a place to live. So, those are other factors.
Absolutely, and there are people who are homeless who are working. So it's not when you see the right-wing meme that socialists want to take from those who work and give to those who don't. It's ridiculous. Many folks who are sleeping in cars on their friends' sofas, or wherever they can find a place to put their head, actually do have jobs.
It's criminal. I mean, here we are, supposedly the richest country in the world, and we have so many people don't have enough to eat, don't have homes. It's inexcusable, and it has to do a lot with the way our economy is and the way our government runs, and we need to do a lot better.
So, Arlen, we're going to kind of talk on one of your favorites, which is the dangers of Trump and the right wing, the potential fascism road that we're heading down. And I would say we are heading down that road for sure, regardless of the president. Do you, and this is at your website, thebigpicturereport.com. We'll get to that. I want to center the Palestinians as well. But real quick, do you see a connection between that, tremendous wealth that we see in much of Western cities like San Francisco, like LA, juxtaposed with people who are sleeping in tents on sidewalks?
What strikes me the most, and Bernie Sanders brought up a lot during the last campaign, presidential campaign, there's 3 people in this country who have more money, more wealth than the bottom 50%. I mean, that's obscene when you have a country where so many people are homeless, like I said, and so many people don't have enough food. There's no excuse for it. It's just the inequality is just getting worse, and no one seems to be willing to address it.
Do you think that the inequality that you just mentioned is a causal factor in the rise of Trump?
It could be. I mean, there's just a lot of things wrong in this country, and since Trump is different and he's not the one in power right now, people are, finding that Biden is somebody that they don't really like. His popularity is very low. So, Trump, of course, makes it sound like he can fix every problem when we know he can't. But the appeal is he's different and he's going to change things.
I mean, people are unhappy. Exactly. They want a change. And that's, I think, explains quite well Barack Obama's more successful campaigns, right? I mean, he got over 50% twice. He got more votes and a higher percentage of vote than anybody. I think you have to go back to like Richard Nixon or something to find somebody Ronald Reagan, who had such a high percentage of the vote. So people are very, very disappointed and unhappy in much of this country for very understandable reasons. And this seems to me where the Democrats have really let down what once was their base, working people. We will talk much more about that, I promise. It is Halitics. Please do please subscribe. Really quickly, just always want to center Gaza. The situation there is just terrible, continues to be awful. 25 Palestinians killed over the last 24-hour reporting period, Arlen. And, in a way that's more sort of awful is these malnourished children and the famine that stalks Gaza. You can sort of understand, I don't, but some could say, well, Israel has to lash out against Hamas. But the famine, the malnourishment there is a direct result of the refusal of Israel to allow aid into the region, and I don't know how that isn't completely unforgivable, inexcusable evil.
Yeah, that's my main complaint about President Biden. I mean, he knows what to do in a lot of other issues and a lot of other things, but when it comes to the Gaza situation, he's totally doing it wrong. He's just letting Netanyahu and Israel get away with whatever they want to do. We're supplying all their weapons. We're supplying money. We're giving them, everything they want and not pushing back. And so we are in many ways responsible for what's happening there.
And yet, let me say something, Arlen, that kind of supports your view of the election, one I ultimately don't share, but that Biden truly is the lesser of two evils. Even when it comes to the Gaza policy, which we both condemn, the Biden policy, what Trump has said, and I do believe him, says he'll be worse. He would be worse. He would even be more supportive of Israel. There wouldn't even be the minimal hand wringing and kind of obvious consternation that Biden has for what Israel's doing.
And of course, Trump says he'll solve the problem in one day or whatever. He can do anything he wants and accomplish anything he wants.
Well, he says that, but he also says Israel needs to just get it over with, which I think just means completely eradicate Gaza. At least that's how I think Israel views it. So to me, that is worse. although I'm not sure whether a slow death or slowly frying in oil is worse than being dropped in the fryolator. I mean, they both are just so awful. This is from thebigpicturereport.com, and that's where you'll find it, at that exact website, thebigpicturereport.com. Arlen linking to the CNN video. He may have up later a video by Rachel Maddow as well. We didn't have that available, so we're going with this one. Arlen, the violent fascist threats are getting worse. So you clearly see, well, that's Bannon, but Trump as a worse, regardless of how bad Biden is when it comes to Israel.
Yeah, Bannon, of course, has reason to be upset because he's going to jail in a few weeks, or less than a few weeks. And he was very angry, and he was ready to just take it out on everybody, all the Biden administration, anybody close to them, the FBI, the CIA. He wants to just totally get back at the entire, power structure. And it sounds like almost a fascist takeover. He wants to just destroy the opposition. And it was very intense. He was very angry. He was very very strong with what he was saying, and it's scary.
Well, we'll get that video up in a sec, but Arlen, I just curious about something, and maybe I just don't know the situation very well, but I think you probably do. What isn't Bannon also really irritated with Trump? I mean, I didn't think they left on such great terms either. Didn't he leave the Trump administration, or was that purely voluntary? And I guess they do remain allies.
Yeah, like a lot of people with Trump, people, go away from him and come back. But it seems like at this moment, everybody on the GOP is totally, all in for Trump. Every single Republican, every person like Bannon and all the other ones, they decided that Trump is the one that's going to, make the difference, and he's going to win. And because all they care about is power, and they see, going all the way with Trump.
I mean, to be fair, though, Arlen, isn't this what our two-party system does? It kind of enforces this kind of this loyalty, where you'll see both, progressives, for example, endorsing Hillary Clinton or a Joe Biden. Although it often doesn't go the other way. Hillary Clinton, of course, endorsing George Latimer, the AIPAC choice in the race against progressive Jamal Bowman, which I find very, very unfortunate. But in general, don't we find that the two-party system enforces a certain loyalty to the party and the party leaders, regardless?
Well, that is true. It is that way now. It didn't used to be that bad, but now it is. I just think Republicans are much worse. I think they're more extreme, and they're more all in for everything that Trump is doing. So that they scare me, because I think our democracy might be in trouble, and there's some fascist tendencies there that scare me.
Let's get this video up. This is from thebigpicturereport.com. I do not know this host's name. I like to think I know a lot of the hosts, but I don't really follow cable news the way I used to. Here he is talking. Well, we'll see Bannon, but others as well. Say again?
No,
accountability.
Never mind.
Yeah, that's how Steve Bannon is describing Inauguration Day 2025 if Donald Trump wins a second term. The longtime Trump ally delivering a series of chilling warnings at a conservative gathering in Detroit. Vowing a win by Trump means investigations and prosecutions of anyone who has crossed the former president.
November 5th is Judgment Day. January 20th, 2025 is Accountability Day. Trust me, on the afternoon of the 20th, we're also going to start the pick and shovel work to take apart the administrative state and to take on its rogue element, the Praetorian Guard, the deep state. We're going to run them all out of town. Are you?
And I'm going to stop that right there. So I think a lot of people are very, hear that and they're, it sounds scary, right? This dismantling of the government and of institutions that do tend to act somewhat as a bulwark against, the 4-year cycle where you got a new president who wants to run roughshod. But Arlen, and this is again where I try to see the empathy for the Trump supporters, they're really they hate the establishment. For them, the establishment is the problem. It's causing them real problems. That's how they perceive it. I think they're often wrong, but they are facing real problems, and the establishment is not solving those problems. And that's why many are embracing someone like a Trump and a Bannon.
Well, Hal, you got to think about this too. The Republicans have no alternative. They have no ideas about what to do about all this. They just don't like who's in power now, and they want to be in power themselves. So, I think you got to look at it that way. I don't see Trump having any ideas that.
I don't. I agree. This is a reaction to the Washington, D.C. establishment, which is perceived, and understandably so in many cases, as a major part of the problem rather than as trying to help or be a solution.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, more from Bannon.
Are you prepared to fight? Are you prepared to give it all? Are you prepared to leave it all on the battlefield? Ladies and gentlemen, it's very simple. Victory or death.
I mean, that's clearly fascist imagery, and I don't think there's any doubt about it. You've been warning about this. You're right. I agree. This is scary.
It is. And there's so many people like that. And in the Republican Party in Congress, nobody's standing up to any of that. Everybody's totally all in for Trump. And, they're going all in. And that, for me, is pretty scary, too.
Well, I'll tell you something that I find scary is the Democratic Party isn't coalescing around a set of truly progressive populist policies that would address the very, very serious challenges that Americans are facing, not the billionaire elite, not the multimillionaires and the managerial class that supports the Democrats, but poor, struggling, and working Americans. I don't see a party in the Democrats that is united for justice for working people. And to me, that is the reason for the rise of Trump.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. But, there's only so much that Biden could do. He faces a Congress and a Supreme Court that are not they're not in favor of him. They're, very staunchly against any progress, any change. So, it's very difficult for Biden to do much more than he's doing now. I agree, though, the Democratic Party has to really reevaluate who they are and what they stand for and really start being more pro-worker, pro-union, and, be more for the people and less for their donors.
So more to scare you. And again, I think if the Democratic Party doesn't want this to happen, in other words, they don't want Trump to be elected, then they've got to embrace, again, populist policies, which include taking down the billionaire elites. It's not going to happen, but I think we need it to happen.
Well, you could dismiss this as a Trump ally who's saying it's not Trump, but this is what...
So I want to stop it there because he said exactly what I was thinking when he said you can dismiss this as a Trump ally. It's not Trump. So he's going to play Trump, which is really important. Who's the host again? You were telling me.
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, you don't know. Okay, let's go back to the video for just a little more.
The former president himself has said about the idea of retribution.
And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. Based on what they've done, I would have every right to go after them. Well, revenge does take time, I will say that.
It does.
And sometimes revenge can be justified.
Okay, you're a Republican.
Right, so I'll stop it there. We don't need to hear the panel. We're our own panel.
We get the idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's very scary. But again, Democrats they went after Trump with everything, whether the charges were legit. I know we fight back and forth about Russiagate. It ultimately did not come. There was no smoking gun. There was no direct link ever proven, ever shown between Trump and Putin. And the Democrats bear blame, I believe, for the hyper-partisan atmosphere in which Trump now taking to the next level, clearly vowing retribution.
Of course, I think differently about that. I think Putin was really all in, as were other countries, in making sure that Trump got elected. They put a lot of money, a lot of effort into it. And, there's just so many things, wrong, when Trump had all those Russian people in his office, those officials, and he was talking to them for a long time. I mean, they were very sympathetic with each other, Russia and Trump. So, I just
Well, you
think
can
that's-
understand why. I mean, now with Biden, vowing to stay allied with Ukraine for another 10 years, I can see why Putin might have preferred to have Trump as president, because Trump, at least with regard to Ukraine, is talking about peace, talking about trying to end the conflict there.
And Trump likes every single authoritarian he's ever met, whether it's North Korea or Orban or anybody else. He loves those people who are basically dictators. And, that's just who he is. And he's part of actually a worldwide movement, as we notice, of far-right parties getting into power in Europe. A lot of it has to do with immigration and other, their economies are even worse than ours. So, worldwide, it doesn't look good.
The left is failing, right? I mean, correct. The left is failing the people, just as the same reason you see the rise here. Issues like immigration, energy prices, inflation, because we need to deal with those issues. But the way the left has dealt with them, both in Europe and the United States, seems to be to put all the burdens on the workers, on the middle class, and the elites are, if anything, benefiting from some of these crises.
Nobody wants to take on the elites. They're too strong. The rich people are too powerful. They have all the money and get themselves elected. And, so, nobody's willing to step up to them, and it's only going to get worse.
Well, I mean, that's ultimately why we see the electorate angry, resentful, willing to embrace demagogues, in my opinion, because the traditional parties are not up to the task of governing on behalf of the people.
The conditions are not good right now. I mean, you think about global warming and all the other fossil fuels and all the other things that nobody's really taking on and trying to solve, because the other side is too powerful. The corporations have too much money. And of course, if Trump gets elected, then he'll just make it even more extreme. He'll be giving more tax breaks to the billionaires. And that's why they're, on his side, so many of them, like Elon Musk and some of those.
But despite the fact, as you correctly, I think, identify a problem where both parties will not take on the ruling, the wealthy, the plutocratic class, you still view Trump as so much worse that we cannot embrace a third party challenge or an alternative party challenge like a Jill Stein.
No, we can't take any chances of Trump getting elected, because I don't know if there'd be another election after that. He would just be so strong in power, he wouldn't let the other side, get anywhere. And, I don't know if there, like I say, would be another real election after that.
You're watching Halitics. We've got Arlen Grossman with us. It's a Tuesday. I was going to say it's a Monday with Arlen, but it's not a Monday with Arlen. It's a Tuesday with Arlen. Arlen, anything else you want to say with regard to this situation? I have some other stories to talk about. We've got about 40 more minutes left. I might get back to Gaza if we run through those quickly, but I know this is something that is dear to your heart, is this need to stop Trump. Not at all costs, obviously, and you've made it clear it's not at all costs. For example, you've endorsed, you've called on Biden, for example, to take a more overtly critical stance towards Israel and to hold up the supply of weapons to Israel so long as they're using our weapons to kill Gazan civilians, even though this could be problematic for his reelection. So I appreciate that, but I also appreciate how important you think it is to stop Trump. Anything else you want to add to that particular topic at this point?
Well, I have been noticing that the right-wing media, which is very strong and a lot of people stick with it, the Fox News and their copycats, are really lying out. They're lying about Biden, and they're like this. One of the big things was they show pictures of him wandering around like he's lost, like he's totally demented. And what they don't show is that he's actually going over to somebody who parachuted right next to him and talking to them. They don't show that, but they show the big, the picture of him just wandering off like he's not going anywhere, and then they stop the film. And they're doing a lot of that. They're doing a lot of things that they, just not honest about.
Yeah, right-wing media has been a terrible problem for at least 35 years or so, since the deregulation really got seriously underway with Reagan and George H.W. Bush, and then continued by Clinton for sure. And obviously the rise of Limbaugh and others is really, it's a very anti-democratic element. But we see that an anti-democratic with a small d, they are generally against the Democratic Party, but more serious, even more problematic from my perspective is they're just against democracy. And we see that in European media. The newspapers in England are pretty awful, actually. So we have, this is a worldwide challenge that we're facing. All right, 240-242-5646 if you want to join us. Arlen always likes the calls. I like the calls too. I want to hear from you. We are out there broadcasting. I'm just going to pop out that chat. Arlen, not seeing any chat, but if we get any, I will share with you thoughts from chat. And you were just simply saying, that the media doesn't cover. No, they don't. I mean, my son was pointing out how, and I just reminded me of, and he wasn't even born, of course, but 88, how Dukakis was taken down by those pictures, those images of him in that tank, right, with that tank hat on, was just ways they kind of, especially Fox and other right-wing or conservative outlets, really figure out ways to embarrass and shame Democratic politicians.
When I think about that, I think of Howard Dean. He made that, cry during a rally that, just ruined him. It totally destroyed his campaign. They made a big thing out of nothing. And, the media has the power to do that.
There are many examples of that. Right. The John Edwards haircut was very problematic for him. The Scream. There were John Kerry playing hockey. I mean, you just see this repeatedly. And it's funny because I won't say it's funny, it's interesting that I think what we would now call liberal media like MSNBC, CNN, NYT are trying to find those moments where they can do the same to Trump, and they haven't been as successful.
No, they haven't. The right-wing media has been very strong, very effective, and I think very profitable, and they keep trying to rile up their viewers and, making everything look so, like Biden can't do a darn thing. And there's an awful, he's a member of a crime family, which is totally not true. They're willing to lie and make up stories, and they make a profit by doing that.
Yeah, although the Hunter Biden conviction is not helping the Biden campaign. All that said, I still think, in fact, I would say I feel more strongly than I have, that Trump is not going to get reelected, Arlen. The 538, despite all the polls that suggest Biden's in trouble, 538 ran all these simulations and concluded Biden had a very slight 52% chance of winning. Trump with a 47%, and then 1% could be somebody else. I think that still understates the likelihood of Joe Biden serving another 4 years.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. I've always been saying I think Biden's going to be the winner in the end, but Trump is just hanging in there so strongly. But I think by the time November comes around and Trump says crazier and crazier things and looks more and more demented, I think people are going to have to see that. And if the Democrats point it out and advertise the right way, I think they could make a very strong case that, Trump is scary. And
assuming Biden wins, I think we can all breathe a sigh of relief that it was Trump, because you made the point that a Nikki Haley and perhaps a Ron DeSantis would be a stronger opponent.
Well, Trump is the guy now, and everybody on the right is totally all in for him. So, that's just the way it's going to be. And but like I say, I think there's more and more evidence that Trump is really losing it, and the stuff about talking about his cognition and all that, and he challenged Biden to a cognitive test, and he totally messed up the name of his doctor. It wasn't Dr. Johnson, it was Dr. Jackson. And his cognitive test, I think, is just an Alzheimer's kind of a test where is that a monkey, is that a monkey, is that an elephant? And,
Yeah, well, we don't have good, the choices are not good ones coming up.
No, and the American people are very upset at the choices they have now. They don't want to see, two old men running for president, but that's what we got.
Arlen, I saw this story. Arlen usually helps me select the stories. He often does select or recommend stories for us to discuss. Today, for today's show, he was busy with his family over the weekend, so I did the initial curating, but I tried to keep in mind the stories that you would find interesting, Arlen, and this one jumped out at me as soon as I saw that headline, because I know you have expressed concerns about social media and its role in maybe stifling democracy and causing unhappiness, especially among young people. So here we have Surgeon General Murthy, and it's funny because I saw his name and I said, I wonder if he's half Indian, half Irish, because I read it as Dr. Vivek Murphy.
Yeah.
But I knew it was Murthy, but sometimes you just see it and it looked like Murphy for a second, but no, it's Murthy. And you support this call, right? You would like to see some kind of warning labels when say you and I click on Facebook, it would say warning, this is bad for your developing minds or something of that sort.
Well, what I've noticed in the news is that young people today are having a lot of trouble communicating with each other. There's a lot of loneliness. There's a lot of addiction. There's people are a lot of depression. I think social media and smartphones have a big part in that, because that's a lot of kids just rely on that rather than being with real people and doing real things like we used to do. And I think there's definitely an effect, and it's not a good one. And we need to do something about it. But of course, you have to take on the giant media companies to do that, and they're going to resist. So
100%. I'm with you on this, Arlen. You and I have taken different tacks when it comes to I don't know what you'd call it, regulating speech on social media platforms. I'm not a big believer in the government telling X or Facebook that these posts can't be, you can't put these posts up there. You have to put warning labels on specific posts. But when it comes to the platforms themselves, I agree with you. I think these are a real concern. I think they do add to loneliness. There's cyberbullying. I mean, look, all these things, being a child is always tough. Being an adolescent is tough. Being a young person, being an old person, these are all hard. We all face these challenges. But the direct contact with other people, where you see people, you touch people, you meet people, I think that's part of being a happy human being. And you just don't get that on social media to nearly the same degree. It's virtual contact. It's not real contact to a significant degree. I'm with you.
Yeah. What's really crazy to me too is if you have a smartphone and you know how to use it, if you're 7 or 8 years old, you can get any kind of pornography in the world. And, how is that going to affect people in the long run? How does it affect relationships and sexual encounters? And that amazes me that that's allowed.
Well, I would like to see much more regulation of online porn. No question about that. I think that needs to be. I don't think if you're in China or in some of these countries, they do take some of the Muslim countries. I don't think it's possible. I think they suppress those sites. But yeah, in much of the world, it's very, very accessible, and it doesn't matter what age you are. Again, very problematic, no question. Very violent websites as well. So these are all real issues. For me, the biggest problem again is just substituting virtual contact for real interaction with somebody who's in front of you, that you can see, you can hear their voice, not see them speaking like you and I see each other talking, but where you actually hear their real voice, where you can touch each other. I think it's a terrible problem. I would also, though, go beyond. Now, I understand this is what Dr. Murthy can do. So I salute him. I think he's doing the right thing. I appreciate it. I want government to do far more to promote places where kids can meet, rec centers, and not just kids, seniors, everybody. Public spaces where you can go without any charge. Libraries are great, but they tend to be quiet. They are often more for older folks. I want to see many more. Every kid should live within a mile at most, I believe, of a rec center where they can go after school, they can go on weekends and hang out.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on that, but it's really hard to do because everybody, the electorate just doesn't want to pay the taxes to make this happen. And, all the money seems to be going, as we know, up to the top, and, it doesn't get down to the average person, the working people, and so on. As far as social media too, you have a program like X, used to be Twitter, owned by Elon Musk. He has no problem posting all kinds of Nazi stuff and racist stuff, and but he could do whatever he wants with his site, and a lot of people use it. So there's a lot of issues.
Well, I want to just push back on this point a little bit. By the way, we have a caller we're going to get to in just a moment. Caller, maybe Stephanie. I don't have all my numbers memorized yet, but I see that the area code suggests it might be Stephanie, who's a great caller. I want to just push back a little bit about that because, again, you and I disagree on the content of political speech and restrictions on it. Yes, I don't like, of course, pro-Nazi propaganda. I don't like pro-Israel genocidal propaganda. But I also can't ignore the fact that I get to broadcast to as many people who want to see me and hear me for virtually nothing. And so I don't want to toss that baby out with the bathwater. I always am very, very leery of any content-based restrictions. That's not what Murthy's talking about. He's not saying content. He's saying, hey, the platform itself is the problem, not necessarily what's on it. The platform. I would be okay, again, with some content restrictions like the porn. If you have very specific rules, you can't show genitalia, whatever. You can't show this, you can't show that, you can't violate. I'm fine with that kind of stuff. But when it comes to restricting what I would call political speech, that's where I think, Arlen, you and I may not see it exactly the same. I'll get your response, but let's get our caller. You're on the air, caller. Who do we have?
This is Stephanie Howell. Hi,
Hey.
Hal. Hi, Arlen.
Hi.
Hi.
I just wanted to comment on your observation that we don't have good choices, and it's a choice between two old men. I just wanted to remind everyone that actually there are other candidates that will be on the ballot for other parties. Claudia de la Cruz, who is a young woman who is running with the Socialist Party, and Jill Stein, who's a Green. I cannot remember who won the Libertarian nomination, but I did watch them in the debate, and quite a few of them were oddly impressive. Whenever I take those PolitiFact quizzes, it tells me I'm a left libertarian, whatever that means. So that I found interesting, but I'm planning to vote third party, and I'm planning to vote third party because what I am voting for is an end to this two-party system, and probably for Jill Stein, which would be my second vote cast for Jill Stein, because the Green Party platform is very close to what I support, and only by doing that will it send them, staying home and not voting does not send the message. Like either of these people who win, they don't care how many people vote as long as they win. So staying home doesn't send any message at all, but voting third party does. I totally disavow anyone saying that that's a vote for Trump, because it's not. It's a vote against the two-party system. And my problem with Biden, Gaza.
Well, and also let me just jump
genocide.
in, Stephanie, real quick, and we'll let you finish up. But I think it's even more than just a vote against a two-party system. And I'm with you on this. I'm supporting Jill Stein for president as well. And I would, if I were in Michigan or Pennsylvania, I'd vote for her. But I think it's also just a vote for Green Party policies. I mean, I'm not 100% with the Green Party on every issue, but I'm much closer to them on most issues than to any other party. So I feel like when I vote for Jill Stein, I'm sending a message, not just that I really dislike the Democrats and I really, really, really dislike the Republicans. It's that I actually really do like the Greens.
Can I say something here? I think third party would be great if we had the same kind of rules as they do in Europe with parliamentary systems where you have multiple parties. You do not have that option here, really. You only have two choices. The rules are, the parties are just totally in power and don't want to give anything up to anybody else. And, our entire political system, our election system is messed up. So, a vote for a third party is not going to get any of the third party elected, obviously.
Your response, Stephanie.
But I do believe that becomes a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. This is the sword over our heads all the time. And true, I don't expect that Jill Stein's going to be elected president, but I do expect that enough people that vote for Jill Stein, imperil Joe Biden's reelection. I'm hoping that sends a message to the Democrats. Now, of course, Bernie's highly successful run only sent them the message to become the most undemocratic of Democratic parties one could possibly be. But I think that when the Democrats can't win without the people who start voting green, we might see some change. And I've told my friends Gaza was really the last straw to getting my vote. It's just the last straw. But there's still other things that I'm very upset about, like how Biden ran that he would have a public option. That was part of his campaign. There has not been a whisper about that since he came into office. So, yay, Jill Stein. But Claudia Dela Cruz is really, really impressive as well. So we do have other choices.
Awesome call, Stephanie. Thank you so much. And of course, I always especially appreciate Stephanie's call because she and I pretty much see eye to eye on every issue. So I know she's going to be saying something intelligent, well thought out, and powerful.
Yeah, she said some good things, and I'm totally in sympathy with both of you. I'd like to see, a Green Party person, winning the presidency or a socialist or anything like that. It's just we don't really have that option right now. And until, the election system is changed and we get rid of this electoral college and all the other, bad things going on, we run the risk of having somebody like Trump in there who will totally destroy probably all elections in the future.
Well, even countries that have more, what you would consider more democratic voting mechanisms often do get bad leaders. I mean, there's no perfect system. There's no ideal system. I think, though, that Stephanie made a very powerful point, which is as long as we allow ourselves to be intimidated by the fear of the worst candidate and therefore vote for a poor candidate or a bad candidate, we will not see the system change. And I think that is a very hard argument to disagree with.
Except if it's Trump who gets elected, you won't have much chance of changing anything because he's going to be totally in charge and he's going to push down any opposition.
All right, Arlen, you get the last word there, but I will, piggybacking on something altogether different that Stephanie said, I got a little concerned when she started complaining about two old guys. She wasn't talking about us, was she? I mean, that's where I thought she might have been going because it wouldn't have been such a stretch, to say the least. But they're actually old. That's how old these guys are that are running for president. They're older than both of us.
And not only that, the leadership in Congress is very old, and the Schumers and all the others who are in their 70s or beyond. It's not good. We need young people in there.
Chuck Schumer was a senator when I was a young man, and that just tells you. And he's not even the oldest. I mean, he's not Steny Hoyer. He's not some of these.
We got older.
Well, Pelosi. She's still in Congress. She's not the leader of the Democrats, but she's in Congress. It is kind of astonishing, and we do need new blood, no question about it. All right, so specific changes. Let's just get back to Murthy for a second. Vivek Murthy. I want to be clear, Dr. Murthy, the Surgeon General. So here are some suggestions which I endorse. Restrict features. So besides, he wants more transparency. Like if they have any information about how Facebook or X or whatever impacts on users, they need to share it. But also he wants to restrict the push notifications, autoplay, and infinite scroll. And let me say, Arlen, I totally endorse the push notification ban and the autoplay ban. I can't stand that. When you're on one site or you're reading your email and then it starts chiming. I have spend so much time trying to disable every unwanted noise from my computer. The autoplay, same thing. You suddenly you're looking at something and you start hearing noises in the background, some video. So I completely support that.
Yeah, me too. I think it's awful. I've noticed that advertising has just grown and grown and grown on the internet, and commercials, and it really does disrupt whatever you're reading and whatever you want to find out. And it's getting worse, just like on television. If you go on the network shows, you have like 10 minutes of commercials, like a dozen or more commercials. When I grew up, maybe one or two, but it's getting crazy.
It's terrible. It's terrible. But one good thing about it maybe is that people will watch less TV. I could be wrong. I watch very little TV, but I do watch a lot of video on YouTube, like my own stream, and which doesn't have commercials, but so many do, and those are it's all the time. It's worse even than TV, I think, in terms of the number of commercial videos you get stuck seeing. He also just, I want to mention briefly this infinite scroll. So that's like Facebook, where you just keep going, it never ends. You just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, and there's no end to a page. I think his problem there is that when you have that infinite scroll, there's no break, right? It's not like you're looking at at your Twitter feed and you just keep going and going and going, and it never ends, and you never look up, and you never get even a pause from the tech.
I'm not sure what you really mean. I mean, I can certainly stop whatever I'm reading whenever I want to.
Oh, no, you can stop it, but in infinite scroll, if you're reading a New York Times article on your computer, you can scroll to the bottom of it, and then you can't scroll any further. But if you're looking at your Twitter feed or your Facebook tweet feed and you hold down the down arrow, it'll just keep going forever.
Well, don't hold down the down arrow.
Right. Well, he wants to change that, so you're forced. So the consumer, the tech consumer, is forced to take a break every now and then. Is, I think, his point.
Yeah,
which to me makes sense.
It all makes sense. Yeah.
All right. Let's get to a couple of other stories, Arlen. Unless you had anything else you wanted to. Well, you made a point. Before we do that, this was one other. I noticed this comment from the Chamber of Progress, which I guess is a industry group, lobbying group. So clearly their only concern is themselves and their maximizing their profits regardless of the cost to everyone else. They don't like the proposals by Murthek, and they say here, legally speaking, the proposals by Murthek are no different than the Trump administration Surgeon General declaring there needs to be a warning label on mainstream media because he deems it to be fake news. And first of all, that's absurd. Clearly, there's a difference. The proposals by Murthek are content neutral. Again, he's just saying, hey, we got to have the same rules for everything, and those include none of these, chimes and whatever, the autoplay and the infinite scroll. We're going to get rid of that. We're going to put warning labels. That's totally different from saying, well, this is fake news. That said, I think his point does kind of show why I'm very concerned about restrictions based on speech or warnings based on the speech itself. Because a Trump administration could say, no, the New York Times is fake news. You don't get, and have all sorts of warnings on it.
Yeah, that's what they plan to do, I think, if they get in power.
Right, but you also support, or at least I think, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you've also indicated at least some willingness to entertain government regulations aimed at curbing what you feel are dangerous speech, like the pro-Nazi propaganda or so-called pro-Nazi propaganda.
Yeah, that is a very difficult problem, Hal. I mean, we got free speech, which I totally support, but I think there has to be limits, just like you can't yell fire in a crowded theater. So you have to have something that, we could agree on, which is not easy to do. Of course, corporations don't want government involved at all in anything they do because their, main goal is to make money, to make profits. So it's very tricky. I don't think it's easy to figure out, but if people are willing to do it, like the Surgeon General, and come up with some ideas that others would agree with, then I hope
Well, I don't think the Surgeon General's recommendations are quite the same because they're not political, right? He's not saying you don't get to, this message is dangerous, or this, he's saying it's the platform itself. It's the technology that's the problem, not the content that is being disseminated.
And of course, we haven't even got into AI, which I think is another scary thing, but we could go into that another time.
100%, Arlen. I agree it's scary, and I also agree we can talk about it another time. So before we get to, there was a story about, I wanted to share about how people get these charges. They go to the local clinic, the urgent care, and they get hit with a $1,000 bill, and how problematic that is. But I wanted to just share this first because it's simple, it's easy. It sort of struck me, and it's kind of the opposite of where I this is, I guess, my problem. I always take on the, I always take on my own people. I always take on the progressive wing. I saw this meme on Facebook, and I really did want to respond to it because I've thought about this too. Relates to those, Arlen, those, when you go to like the CVS or Albertsons or wherever you shop, and they ask you when you pay if you want to round up and give money to help homeless kids. And it's kind of appealing. People think about it. This meme says, don't ever do it, because the corporation that you're shopping at will use your contribution to take a deduction from their income tax. Have you ever wondered about that, Arlen? Is this something that you've ever considered or worried about when you give?
No, I'm not really. I just assumed that all the money would go to the charity, but some people are saying it isn't, but they're probably, what you're saying is they're wrong, that the money does go to the charity.
That's where we're going to get to. Yeah, the money does go to the charity, but also the corporation is not allowed to take a deduction. If they do, it's illegal. And I don't even think they would try, because because they get the receipt, right? I mean, it's right on that receipt when you say, yes, I'll round up to from $4.50 to $5. It's right on your receipt. It says rounded up 50 cents. So unless they're keeping 2 sets of books, they can't deduct it. And if they tried, they'd go to jail. The accountant would go to jail. Now, I'm not saying, look, companies do this. We'll try every single trick in the book. I understand, but I don't think this is one of those that they're trying to take advantage of. I think the bottom line is you're not giving Albertsons a tax break when you round up to help like needy kids in your area. I'm not saying you should do it. I'm not urging anyone to do it. I'm just saying I don't think that's something we need to worry about.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
There are more urgent concerns. And yeah, I did get this from, let's see if I can see it. So from the tax, let's see, who is my source? The tax TPC, which, are you familiar with the TPC there? Who gets the tax benefit for those? The tax, something or other, I don't know. Some Taxpayers Coalition, I guess. I'm not even sure. But they set it out here, and if the business is following the law, it will not include your donation. It cannot, or risk jail. So just a little information, kind of like a Scopes thing, trying to maybe just alleviate a concern that many people may have. Again, I'm not saying you should do it. The corporations do it because it's virtue signaling. It makes them look good without them doing anything at all.
Yeah, it is good PR, and I'm glad that they're doing things like that. But the point you're making too is everything you see that you question at all should be fact checked, and a lot of people don't do that enough. You got to go to Snopes, you got to go to other reliable sources where you could see what is actually a fact and what isn't, because people do a lot of lying and pushing their viewpoints that have no legitimacy.
Well, I don't even think it's really lying. I mean, whoever presented that meme maybe knew it wasn't true, but maybe they believed it. Maybe they heard it from somebody else. And, but again, I think our best weapon in the fight against plutocracy is the truth. And the other thing is that I find very ironic is some of these companies that pay their workers lousy wages, some of their workers are on relief. They're getting food stamps or SNAP assistance or what have you, like Walmart. They're saying, hey, give to help needy families. Some of those needy families are people that they're employing.
Yeah, and just the whole healthcare system of this country, as we all know, is just horrible. I mean, they have it so much better everywhere else, but in this country, you're not guaranteed healthcare, and it's so darn expensive if you don't have it, and if you don't have the insurance, that it's a mess, and we need to do something about it. I don't think Trump will, but hopefully Biden.
Well, there's a lot of dissatisfaction, Arlen, with the Affordable Care Act for a lot of reasons. Some of them were actually legitimate. It didn't do nearly as much as it should have. For example, to end medical bankruptcies, to make sure everyone was covered. Not everyone's covered by the Affordable Care Act. But Trump using dissatisfaction with the law, as well as a lot of money from corporations that don't particularly like it, to attack it, but without any alternative, without anything that was necessary to replace it. And so, that proves your point exactly. The policy is not a good one, but Trump's solution, in quotes, is even worse.
Yeah, he promised, some kind of healthcare system better than Obamacare for the entire 4 years he was in office, but he never did a thing. And in the future, he's not going to do anything either. So,
this is from the New York Times, Dr. Ofri. I wanted to just present this, telling us about getting a very surprise bill from the Urgent Care Center. When she was in Chicago with her daughter, I believe, she got hurt. The little girl did. They took her to the urgent care center. She got an x-ray. The urgent care center, much more convenient, in the neighborhood where they were staying, much cheaper. She assumed she has health insurance, I would assume as a doctor. She figured it would be covered, and then she gets a surprise bill because of this kind of weird hole in the law that allows these operators, these sleazy operators, to charge ER prices for local care, even though it's much cheaper. And because it's above the recommended rate, the insurance company doesn't have to cover it. So there was clearly a surprise bill. Let me see, I got the wrong slide up. Let me get this. All right, thanks heavens. So there was only a sprain. She gets there, and she got a bill for like $1,000 for the x-ray. Her insurance didn't cover it because the insurance would only pay for about $100 for x-rays, and the care center was able to bill her for it because they're not, unlike hospitals, limited to the amount that they negotiate with the insurance company.
Yeah, medical bills, insurance, you just never know for sure what you're going to get, and it's always hard to fight it. So, yeah, laws are needed, and we need protection, but we're not really getting that kind of protection. And, the hospital industry is very strong, and the EMA is very strong. So, it's tough to make those kind of changes, but we do need regulations.
Yeah, what sort of disappointed me about this article, and I thought it was a good article, was that the doctor didn't say, hey, the real answer has got to be Medicare for all. Everyone has to be covered. Then the government would be in a much better position to just say, we're not going to pay for that, or we're not going to pay that much. It's the end of it. Everything's negotiated by the single payer, which is the government. And, they're not going to, presumably they've got to balance the interests of all parties, the provider, meaning the doctor, the nurses, the facilities, and if they don't, then vote them out. Find somebody better.
Yeah, healthcare in this country is just atrocious, and it needs to be changed. We need to do something, but so far we don't have that.
Well, this is why, again, Arlen, I can't vote for Biden. I know you're like, oh, but Trump is worse. Trump is worse. But people are going bankrupt. They're making choices between food and medication, and the government the Democratic government, whether in Washington or Sacramento or Albany, is not there for them.
Yeah, but Hal, what you're not really considering, though, is Biden might want to do all that, but he has to face a Congress that is very resistant, and the industries are very resistant. The courts are resistant, and even if Biden wanted to do that, he can't. He doesn't have the political ability. He can't just do it by himself. He needs.
But doesn't Donald Trump could make that same argument, saying, "Hey, I wanted to present a better health care plan, but the Republicans and Democrats in Congress wouldn't let me." I mean, you're given a lot of excuses, and I would be much more inclined to accept those excuses if Biden not only ran on a truly unabashed progressive platform, but campaigned against Democrats and Republicans who stood in his way and was fighting tooth and nail for these progressive solutions. But he's not in the least. I haven't seen that from him at all.
Yeah, well, like I say, it's not that easy to do. It's easy to talk about, but not that easy to do.
But he doesn't even talk about it. He doesn't even talk about you. Maybe, he talked about minimum wage. He would sign a $15 minimum wage. That's not necessarily my first priority. We do need much higher wages, but for workers, but without a jobs plan, what I fear is raising the minimum wage could actually lead to some decrease in employment, at least in some industries. So I do support raising the minimum wage, but I'm a little bit concerned about some of the negative, some of the unforeseen consequences. That said, Biden said he would support it. He didn't vote for it. He didn't. He didn't push it through the Senate. He could have. He didn't.
Well, Biden's in an election that he has to win, and he has to be very careful about it, what he proposes, what he says, what he does, and it's just not that easy to snap your fingers and say, "I want this," because there'll be a lot of pushback, and it's just our system is such that those things are not easy. It's not easy to change the rules.
But we elect leaders to lead, don't we? I mean, isn't that why we try to get them in there so they'll lead us?
Well, if we vote for Trump, we'll be able to do that because he will be a total dictator and do whatever he wants. But I don't think Biden has that ability.
All right, final story real quick, Arlen, and then I'll let you have the final word after the final story. I mentioned the heat. Is it very hot out there? It's scorching all over the country. The climate crisis is in full bloom right now.
Yeah, I understand the East Coast is getting it very bad. And, my wife in Vermont was telling me how, it's 100 degrees or whatever. Fortunately, where I live, it's nice. We have moderate temperature because we're near the ocean, and it's in the low 70s, and I got sun. So that's why I am where I am now instead of in Vermont. But because I like the weather here.
It does get hot, though, now on the Central Coast, hotter than it used to. By the way, you saw that. Subscribe now. Please do, so we can keep doing this and have more and more penetration in the market. What about the fire situation? I understand down in LA, at least, there's, there are some pretty scary fires. Is this throughout the state? Northern California, too, right? Got some fires.
Well, my understanding is this is the first major fire in the state in the fire season right now. So it's in Southern California, and I'm sure there'll be more.
All right, final word, Arlen. We will cover those fires as and when they occur, and of course the fire season longer and more deadly for a variety of reasons. One of the most important is just the hotter temperatures that resulted from the human-caused global warming by burning fossil fuels. Any other topic, anything else you real quick want to talk about, Arlen, before we both go about our day?
Well, regarding climate change, for sure that if Trump gets in office, nothing will change there. They won't do a thing about it. So, at least Biden will try.
All right. I guess that's it then, Arlen. Thank you so much. You have a great afternoon. It was great talking to everyone. Stephanie, thank you for calling in. I'll be back tomorrow. And by the way, Thursday, we're going to have a surprise guest. Well, it won't be a surprise because I'll tell you who it is. It's Vernon Bohr is lined up, and he and I are going to talk about maybe the military. He has some experience that I most certainly don't in that area. Looking forward to talking to Vernon Thursday. Tomorrow, just me. Have a great afternoon.
Take care.